Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Kageyama, and I'd like to welcome everyone here to Be Your Own Hero. And I'm a stage 4 prostate, bone, and lung cancer patient, and I've been battling cancer for just about 2 years now. It'll be 2 years in October. And so I am so thrilled and so happy to be here. And I'm just so excited. As far as my health goes, I have a huge date with the hospital this Saturday for some fresh scans on my bones and my lungs. And so I'll give you an update on my next interview, but I'm really excited about that because I feel the results are going to be better than the last one, which will be exciting. So we have a very, very special guest here from the great state of New York, and her name is Kayanne McDermott. And I am so excited to have this conversation with her because she has an amazing, amazing story, and she is right in line with what we're doing here. So what I'd like to do is bring her on. Kayanne, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure. Well, thanks, Mark, again for having me on your amazing, amazing platform. So I'm Kayanne, and they call me Dr. K. I'm a naturopathic consultant. I went to University of Bridgeport College of Naturopathic Medicine in Connecticut, and I help a lot of individuals overcome their health issues naturally using nutrition. I'm a huge proponent of using food as medicine, so I teach individual how to use food to help themselves to support their issues that they're dealing with, but mostly focusing on gut health, right? Because your gut is the root of your body. So when you're working on the guts, then you can work out everything else, right? It's like when you think about a tree, you work on the roots and then work out to everywhere, the branches and everywhere else, right? So that's what I do in a nutshell. And I love what I do. I love to help people. I love to make impact and being a part of their health journey, their wellness journey. So pretty much that's what I do in a nutshell.
That is fantastic, Anne. And where I'd like to start is where I think your story kind of starts anyway, and that's with the story of your father. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, so back in 2001, my dad was diagnosed, actually going back to about 1999, he was diagnosed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And, it was a very challenging, few years. And, he did some chemotherapy. They sent him home to die. They were like, there's nothing more we could do. It actually was of the stomach. He had it in his stomach. And so he did chemotherapy for some time, but not much changes he was experiencing. So he came across, I'm not sure how he found her, but he found a naturopathic doctor and he worked with her, and she changed his diet. 1 minute, like next minute I'm seeing my mom and him coming home with, okay, he's not eating meat anymore, he's not doing this, he's not eating that, no more junk food, no more processed food. And as a Jamaican, I'm Jamaican born, we're used to eating our oxtail and our curry goat and our jerk chicken and our pork and this and that, and he couldn't have those things anymore. So he started juicing, and because my dad was a very picky man. Like, he didn't like eating out, like he never went out to dinner. The only thing that we'll probably do growing up in Jamaica was like maybe go to the jerk stand and get some jerk chicken on a Friday and a soda, or go to the bakery and get bread or patties or something. But he was never a person that goes out to the restaurant. So to see him come home now to not having nothing like that anymore, just juicing vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, became part of him. And so he worked with this naturopathic doctor who helped him make these changes. And also, we are a family of prayer. So we coupled prayer with him changing his diet. And because of all that, he lived to an extra 11 years. I mean, during this process, it was very hard on us because a lot of us, we had to make sacrifices of staying home. Like, my mom had to give up her job and be home, be his caretaker, because he couldn't take care of himself anymore. He got so weak and he couldn't just do anything. So, and then I was in school, so I couldn't be home as much as I wanted to be. But we'll rotate. Like if my mom had to go do something, then one of us will stay home with him, while she go do what she has to do. And there are times when we had to feed him. He got so weak that he couldn't take care of himself, couldn't even brush his teeth. My mom had to bathe him, all these things. And, at that time in my life, I was actually, in college, and I just graduated college. And then I said, okay, I'm taking a year off from school, and I'm going to try to figure out what I wanted to do, because I know I wanted to work in the medical field somehow, but I didn't want to do medical. I didn't want to do Western medicine. I wanted to really work with more natural, but I didn't know what it was called. I grew up in this, I'm from a Jamaican heritage where, you're sent to go drink, bush tea for this, bush tea for that, take this, take that, rub down with that, rub down with this, right? So it's already in my blood, right? So, my dad came across this naturopathic doctor. I looked it up, I researched it, because I started to see changes in him. Like he was getting better. Even the medical doctors were very shocked. Like he'll go for his visits, and they were shocked that he was still alive, because they had gave up on him. They sent him home to die. They're like, Mr. McDermott, there's nothing we can do for you. And
so let me stop you there for one quick second, because what's going through my mind is, you're going through school, your dad is battling cancer and is not doing that well. So what is going through your mind as far as his situation?
Well, for me at that time, at that age, I was just praying. I'm like, God, I don't want to lose my dad. That's it. At one point I had to really focus. Like when I was in school, I had to block out that situation, because if I thought about it, I wouldn't be able to focus in the school. So I had to block it out so I can concentrate on my studies. And then when I will be home, then I'll attend. So once I leave home, I had to forget what was home, because then if I remembered that, I wouldn't be able to focus. So at that time, I was like, I don't want to lose my dad. I was scared. I was scared. I was fearful. I didn't want to lose my dad, and then those things going through your mind of like, I want him to be around to see me get married. I want to see him having, see me having children. I want to see him accomplish other things in my life, so all these things were passing through my mind. So I was very scared. I was very alone, in my own thoughts and emotions, only because I did not want to now become that burden for my mom. My mom was basically his caretaker. So I was staying strong for them, for everybody. I had siblings, but they were going to work and everything like that. But being the last child, I was the one mostly home. So I would see a lot of the caretaking of my mom, taking care of my dad, going to his doctor's visits, him coming home, not being able, and he lost a lot of weight. My dad was not a big person, but he had lost tremendous amount of weight. So to see him in that stage was very scary, because he was almost like a stick, and not being able to, you want to stay strong for him, you not break down in front of him. You want to be there. So it's almost like I started to become almost robotic. Like I had to become a part of the process. Like, okay, go get his plate to eat, feed him, have to help him feed him. Okay, walk him to the bathroom. He needs to go to the bathroom, sit with him, talk with him, and these things. So it's almost like I kind of started becoming robotic, where I was forgetting my emotions and just had to be present. Whatever he needed, I just had to be there.
So through this process, and I know it had to be extremely hard on all of it. It's hard on everybody, and it's a different kind of hard on the patient, and it's different for the caretakers and the family. Mm-hmm. And it's a tough, very, very tough thing, and in fact, in some ways, it's harder on the people around the patient, as opposed to being the patient, because you just feel so helpless. So, yeah, can you expand on that?
Yeah, that is true. I mean, at one point, like, at that age, and I was in my early 20s, about early 20s. When he was first diagnosed, I was probably about 18, 19. And then I had to give up a lot of my life, like social life. I didn't go out to hang out with friends. I mean, I'm more of an introvert anyway, so does it matter? I don't know. But I didn't really make effort to go out with friends. I had to make the sacrifice to stay home with my dad because he couldn't be alone. So if my mom had to go take care of something, someone had to be home, and that person was me. And so even at the time, like a couple years before he passed, um, because he did pass away, but as we go through the story, he did live an extra 11 years, whereas they gave him a couple months, right?
Mhm.
So when his last year or last 2 years, at the time when he passed away in 2011, I graduated from medical school, naturopathic medical school. And months prior to that, I was working on other things. And when I graduated, I was working on opening up my practice and everything, but I had to put it on hold because he couldn't be home alone. I had to stay home with him. And thankfully, he was able to see me graduate. He was able to come to my graduation. But emotionally, that was it was a lot because he was still, recovering, or he was still trying to heal. And it is stressful when the family members are, because it's like you're pretty much giving up you're giving up what you have to do just to be there for him. So for me, I was always there with my mom. So if it wasn't my mom, it was me, because my siblings were already on their own doing their own thing, so it was me at home. And I had to find a way to disconnect from what I truly was feeling. Part of me was, like I said, scared and didn't know what to do. So I was going along with the process, but I had to sacrifice my life to an extent. Like I didn't have a social life too much. I didn't at the time because I had to make sure I was home. If I went to school, I had to be home straight from school. Because just in case my mom needs to do something, I'm there. So in a sense, it kind of took a little toll on me because at that age, you're like, I should be enjoying myself, my young adulthood. But I was just being present with my dad, because you're also thinking, okay, if something happens to him, you don't want to fall into a place of like, what if I did this? What if I did that? So I did my best, as his daughter to, be present. And it does take a toll on you because even like just going to bed, it's not normal because you're sleeping, being alert. And I remember there are times where I'll wake up out my bed and I feel myself getting emotional. I didn't see this coming. I remember waking up out my bed.
I tend to bring that out of people.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know how this is coming up, but I remember getting out my bed at night and just checking to see if he's still breathing. Just looking into his bed because he got so skinny and his breath was shallow. So I'll get up in the middle of the night and I was just to check to make sure you see that chest rising as he's sleeping. And so even just sleeping wasn't good because you're sleeping but awake. You're trying to be present, and then also if he needs something, you're listening if he calls out for you. Because at one point my mom had to go back to work, because the bills still had to be paid, things had to be taken care of, and she had to go back to work. So there were times where I was home, it was just me and my dad, and I had to listen out for him in case he needs anything and if he needs to go to the bathroom. So it takes a toll, being a caretaker or even being related to the caretaker. It can take a toll on you after some time, because it's a burden that you carry without thinking about it. You just carry it, you just be there, you be present, for them.
So looking back on that experience, which it makes you grow up very quickly and you mature very quickly as well. Is there anything that you would have changed about the way you did things back then?
I don't think I would change anything because, at that time with my dad, I did my best to be there for him. If he needed to go somewhere, I was able to drive. I had my license. So if he needed to go somewhere, I could take him. And I was thankful. I was grateful for that. I was grateful that I was able to help, in that way. So I wouldn't change anything, because again, I'm more of an introvert. I was not like with that party person or going out all the time. I wasn't that type of person. So, I mean, yes, I had friends that I wanted to hang out with, but I was so focused on just being present at home that I didn't think about that. You know, I didn't think about the friends. I mean, you know, yeah, I talked to my friends on, you know, at the time was AOL chat or something. I don't remember. You know, so I'm talking to my friends on that, and you know, they know what I'm dealing with. But I wouldn't change anything. If anything, I would say I wish I did even more for him. You know, you know, he's no longer around, but I'm grateful and thankful for just being able to just be there, you know, for him.
That is so beautiful. I loved your answer there. It's really good, really great. So as he's going through all this, what is the most important thing that you learned from him once he started his cancer journey?
I learned about his grit, his determination. Even though his flesh was like, you know, he don't want to live anymore, but his inner man was fighting, right? And also learned that it's important to have support when you're going through something, because when you don't have support, then you could fall apart. And in his process, I just learned about how to be determined, and you know, once you believe in yourself. I mean, one of the things I noticed, my dad has a praying family. He had scriptures. He told me, he said, Kay, type up some scriptures for me, some healing scriptures. He gave me the scriptures he wanted, and I typed them out and printed it out and they were everywhere on the wall. So wherever he goes, he would see it. So, you know, in the bathroom, in his bedroom, in the living room, in the kitchen, on the fridge was a scripture, a healing scripture. So wherever he goes, he would see this, you know, and encourage him. So even in case if he himself was discouraged, you know, he will always see that thing there reminding him, like, by his stripes I am healed, right? You know, I'm gonna heal you. Like, it was wherever he goes, he will see that. And I learned through that it's so important that we have a strong foundation, because if you don't have a strong foundation, everything else would just don't matter, right? Just like building a house. If a house don't have a strong foundation, how can you build on it? So my dad, going through his journey, he really relied on the grace of God to take him through, and the healing power of the Lord, which did take him through, because again, he did live an extra 11 years where the doctor gave up on him in months, right? So that was a huge testament to, you know, his faith, you know, his determination, and to his willingness to fight.
Let's talk about that diagnosis. What are your thoughts in your position now as a naturopathic doctor? What are your thoughts on that very important thing called the diagnosis?
You know what, the diagnosis is so important that we don't see the individual has a diagnosis. It's what makes up that person first, right? Because even with my dad, you know, according to, you know, research, they says that non-Hodgkin's lymphoma comes from people who have been farming, deal with a lot of chemicals from farmers and all that. And I did that research because I was when he was diagnosed, I was trying to question in my head, how did he get this thing? Like, where did it come from? You know, and that came up my research is from farm. And guess what? My dad actually was a farmer in Jamaica, and he did use fertilizers and all these different things, right? And I was like, oh, okay, because non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is actually cancer of the lymph nodes, and it could be in different areas of the body. So, you know, when it comes to having the diagnosis, is so important to find out, because of course you're gonna first find, okay, how did I get this thing, right? So I'm sure when he first got diagnosed, he's like, huh, you know? And also, when you get diagnosed with something with a big C, right, you first have to find out, is it malignant or is it benign? Because he mistakenly, actually, when he first got diagnosed, he heard wrong. He thought it was malignant, but it said benign. But he ended up still doing chemotherapy. And what really actually broke him down was the chemotherapy, not really the cancer, not the diagnosis, right? And all the chemicals and all that stuff. And then his body was already weak to begin with, because my dad was not a person that eat healthy, really. You know, you grew up on meats and starch and whatever you wanted, you know, to eat. So, you know, when you get that diagnosis, you want to look at the whole person. You know, for me as a naturopath, you look at the whole person. We're taught to look at the whole person. You don't look at the person has a headache or a cancer or a kidney disease or a diabetes or high blood pressure, because that person is more than the diagnosis. It's, you have to look at every factor. Environmental, you have to look at stress factors, a whole stress. You look at their lifestyle, you look at their emotional factors, right? You look at their digestive. You got even something simple as their bowel movements. That's huge, right? That tells a lot about a person when you ask them about their bowel movements, right? So when it comes to a diagnosis, you don't just look at them as just the diagnosis. You look at them as a whole person. Where do they work? Because the environment plays a whole role in your health. Where do you work? Where do you live? What kind of environment do you live in? Are you living to a chemical factory? Or you know, how was your childhood growing up? Was it a traumatic experience? You know, was it a very toxic environment? Did you grow up in an environment where both your parents were smokers or drinkers? You know, all these things plays a role on a person, you know. So when we go into, you know, a diagnosis, is the person is not just the diagnosis, it's the factors around it.
What are your thoughts on the way that the conventional medical system deals with diagnoses? Which is one of my favorite subjects, by the way.
I mean, you know, it's so, I mean, they have their job to do, right? And sometimes you can't really blame them because it's how they're being taught, right? So this is why I wish naturopathic medicine and Western medicine was more of an integrated thing, because you can complement each other. Because in the medical system, they just focus on the diagnoses. They don't focus on the whole person. You know, they may say, they'll send you home with, you know, okay, I have, you know, you have, you know, stage 2 stomach cancer or prostate cancer, and that's it. Like, okay, these are your options: radiation, chemotherapy, you know, seed implants, whatever it is you need to do. They're not going to talk about, okay, what's your diet like, what's your nutrition like, what are your stress factors like, you know, what kind of toxins are you exposed to in your body care products and your foods. And they don't think, because, and it's not their fault, right? So I wish our system was more of an integrative setting, where, okay, they can do the diagnoses, and then they use people like us, naturopaths, to work with the person as a whole. So I don't think, and then also too, in the medical system, if they can't figure out what it is, they just, okay, we don't know what it is, so let's just say it's this, right? You know, so instead of them trying to work through everything and try to find out what this patient is dealing with, they just, okay, they have to do a diagnosis. They don't try to, you know, I mean, they do a good job of ruling out certain things, you know, but when you have that diagnosis, it's then now, okay, once you have the diagnosis, then it's okay, this is your prescription, this is what you got to take, coming back and see me in a couple months or a couple weeks, you know. And then it's just this cycle. No one is talking about the root cause. No one is talking about what's really going on. No one is really asking the questions, okay, why this thing is there, right? And no one is actually going back to think, okay, if you have a diagnosis, how did it get there? What's the pathophysiology of this thing? Because I believe if we take a look more like that way, if we're always thinking like that when somebody has diagnoses, then we'll have a better outcome of survivors, you know, some people dying unnecessarily. And that's part of the thing that pains me a lot, is when I see useless deaths, when I see someone dying that didn't have to die, only if they just knew certain information that could have kept them alive, you know? So when it comes to the diagnosis system in the medical system, they're so quick to diagnose you with something just to put you on a medication, or just to, you know, it's I'm trying to be careful with my words here. I'm watching my words, I'm watching what I'm saying here. But you know, they're very quick to diagnose you just to say, okay, be on this medication for the rest of your life, and then this medication has all these type of side effects. There's nothing wrong with taking a medication for temporary use, because just to keep someone alive. I'm all for that. I'm all for keeping someone alive. But let's work on the underlying thing here. While we're having them, you know, at bay, keeping them alive. Let's work on this underlying, issue. So when it comes to diagnoses here, on this side of the world, I think we can do better as a medical system in diagnosing. And we shouldn't always rush to diagnose someone. We should really take our time and find out what's really going on. And again, like I said, I really want to go back to the point of it's not their fault. It's just how they were trained. So the way they were trained is the way they're trained to think a certain way, to just look for something and create that diagnosis.
But what I've always had a problem with the diagnosis portion is the power that we have given to conventional doctors as a society. We've given them power throughout our lives. We're raised, hey, whatever the doctor says is right, So if the doctor, that being said, so if the doctor tells you you have 6 months to live, or if you have a year to live, I don't think they're acknowledging the power that they have to determine that, and yet that's the way the person can take it in so many instances, which really, really hurts me because I see it all the time. People who, are given a diagnosis of 6 months, and then all of a sudden their life is a 6-month period, and they're planning their whole life for that particular period of time, and it doesn't have to be that way. And so that's I have a huge problem with that diagnosis, because so many people, they're weak when they have cancer and they get their diagnosis, and that diagnosis just adds to their frail position at that particular time. And so that really gets to me, and I'd like to see all of us change that, and have people realize that automatically, whenever I kind of use it as a badge of honor. I'm gonna confess completely. People always say, yeah, you shouldn't say you have cancer and everything like that. I'm way past that, so I don't even think about it. But I use it, for me, it really helps me to open doors and to open people's hearts automatically in a short period of time. So that's the way I share with people and tell people, because automatically I'm not a threat and all that. So, but I think that's something that we need to change as a society, is the effects of that diagnosis, because so many people, I think, are dying because of the diagnosis.
Yeah, and also too, people are not taking time out to do research for themselves.
Exactly.
People are just taking it as, the doctor's word. They're not going home and researching and digging deep into, like, okay, how can I take care of this thing? They're not looking. And it's also, they're not going for second and third opinions. They're not, so a lot of people been trained or are trained to think a certain way, like, okay, once my doctor says this is this. They're not going to, because I always, even when I talk to my clients or even family members or friends, I said, when you go to the doctor, ask questions. Don't be afraid. It's your health. It's your body. You have that right to ask questions, to ask, hey, what do you mean by this? Or what does this mean? So when someone gets diagnosed with cancer, immediately fear comes over their mind. So they're not thinking of, and cancer's of this big C word. And yes, it can be a little bit detrimental, but if you stop and break down cancer is just uncontrollable cells that multiply uncontrollably, right? Just a simple term. And they don't think like, okay, how can we stop this multiplication from happening? How can we slow this down or stop it altogether? So automatically cancer has become this thing where once I get cancer, like, it's the end of the day, like, I'm gonna die. No, it's not a death sentence. Cancer don't have to be a death sentence. you can actually use it as a tool to fight, you know, and fight for your health and fight for you, fight for your family, you know. So we do need to change. I agree with you. We do need to change, you know, the language and change how we view this thing. Like when we get a diagnosis from our doctors, the first thing we should say is like, okay, what's the next step? What do I do next? How can I get over this thing? Not necessarily, okay, I'm going to now make a bucket list of things to do in 6 months or 3 months, and then my life is done. No. Or I'm going to eat whatever I want to eat and do whatever I want to do. And then boom, okay, let's wait for 6 months. And no, you know, if we change our way of our approach to these things when we get a diagnosis, then we'll have a whole lot more people living, a lot more people living. Right. So I agree with you. We need to change how it's being approached, the approach to everything. But you know, it's just getting that diagnosis is also used as a tool for them as well, right? So for business, for all the other stuff. So, but I don't want to say too much about that.
And I know exactly what you're talking about. But anyway, what I'd like to do is, you know, we're going to wrap up this. This is going to be part one of our interview together, Kayanne, and we're going to bring you back and talk more about your practice and what you do and people that that you've helped and things like that. So we're definitely going to bring you back. Do you have any final thought about what we've discussed here?
I just want to encourage whoever's listening to this that if you ever got a diagnosis, it doesn't have to be cancer. It could be anything. It could be an autoimmune disease. It could be, you know, a cardiovascular disease, could be anything. Whatever it is, don't give up and say, okay, throw in a bucket. You know, take a hold of yourselves, take a step back, breathe, and then begin to do research and reach out to other people. Create a network for yourself. You are the executive of your life. So you create your own e-board, your own executive board. You find out who you want to be on that board and you surround yourself with those people, and then they can help you do the research. They can help you get the right information so that you can overcome this diagnosis. So you're not the diagnosis. This is just a part of the journey that you're on for now, and you can overcome that journey and you can get through that journey and then look back and say, wow, I overcame this thing. So how can I help the next person overcome this?
Love it. Absolutely love it. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing this time with our audience of To Be Your Own Hero. And it was great.
And Mark, you almost made me cry. I haven't cried with my dad in like years. It's been a while.
Guilty. Anyway, it was such an honor and it was so much fun. I love talking to you, and we're gonna talk again soon. And
Thank
so
you so
look
much,
for the
Mark.
second part of this interview. Thank you so much, Kayanne. And so the way I always close out interviews is, you know, my big thing is, you know, we live in such a divisive world, a negative world right now. And let's help each other. Let's respect each other and appreciate your fellow human being, because if we all do something to brighten somebody's day or make somebody's day or give them a smile or say hello, you know, even if it's at the store, you don't know what that other person is going through, and you could, you know, help brighten that person's day. So let's come together as a world and help make this world a better place, because if we don't all as human beings make the effort, nothing will change. And so I'm calling on everyone to make an effort to help make somebody else's day better, or help make somebody else's world better. And that's what I'm all about. And that's what I hope all of you are all about. And so make the most of every single day, every single hour, every single minute, and every single breath. And be blessed. Have a great week, and we shall see you next week on Be Your Own Hero. Thank you so much.